Hey people, welcome to the Run Testers. Kieran here, and today we're going to be looking at two shoes from Inov-8, both of them built for long haul ultra trail mileage. We've got the Inov-8 Terraultra G270 launched about 8 months ago, and the brand new TrailFly G300 Max launched only recently. So in this video we're going to tell you, is one better than the other? Are they suited to different types of runners? And are they any good? In our head-to-head you're going to find out, so watch on. So let's get into the stats really quickly. So the Terraultra G270 weighs 270 grams, the clue is in the name. It comes with a zero drop, it has 4mm lugs on the outside for grip, and it's got a stack height of 12mm in the heel and 12mm in the forefoot. It comes in with a fit width that is 5 on Inov-8 scale, so it's one of the widest shoes that Inov-8 offers. It comes at £145 and $160 in the US, or 170 euros to all you people living in Europe. Now the TrailFly Ultra G300 Max, that is 300 grams. Again, clues in the name. The drop is 6mm, so a bit of a difference there. You've got lugs that are 4mm as well, and you've got a 30mm stack height in the heel, and you've got 24 stack in the forefoot. Again, comes up with a width which is 5 on the Inov-8 scale of width, and this one is going to set you back £170 in the UK, $190 and 195 euros. So before we get into the run, let's take a look at some of the key design details. Now there are a huge amount of similarities here. Both shoes have Inov-8's graphene enhanced graphene grip outsole rubber, and that's there to improve grip and durability. Won a lot of awards, was well received in the 270. Both shoes also have an adaptive fit upper. It's kind of a mixture of a dense mesh really with overlays. There are actually more overlays in the G270 than you'll find in the G300, so there's a bit more structure to the outer upper in that shoe. You've got the same removable TPU insole that's there to actually enhance energy return as well. Inov-8 claims that gives you 40% more energy return than other insoles. The major difference though is the midsole. In the midsole, the newer TrailFly comes with a higher stack of brand new graphene infused G-Fly midsole foam. Now the graphene infused foam, Inov-8 says this new technology with graphene infused into what is essentially an EVA foam will give you 25% more energy return, and in their test it's also retained that performance for much longer duration, up to kind of, I think it was like 1200 kilometers. You didn't see the drop off and the degradation in the responsiveness from that midsole foam compared to some of its other shoes. So that is a big step forward, not just for that responsiveness, but also the durability as well and the performance long term for those shoes. The Terraultra by contrast have a PowerFlow Max foam, and that's kind of like a blend of materials, including quite a high percentage of TPU, so a bit of a difference there as well. So if we flip them over and look at the outsole, although you've got that graphene enhanced grip on both shoes, you'll notice that there's actually quite a considerable difference in terms of the lug patterns, and also what you've got on the new G300 are these cut flex that are in line with the metatarsal bones, your toes basically, that are there to help the shoe flex with your movement, your sort of foot toes natural movement, and also this 10mm deep cut ridge in the outsole of the TrailFly G300 too. Now both of these things, compared to the Terraultra G270, are designed to enable the shoe to move when you hit rocks, when you hit stones, when you hit when you hit tree roots, to let the shoe move naturally without sort of forcing your foot to move inside as well. So the idea is that this is sort of soaking up some of the terrain underfoot without kind of forcing your foot into weird patterns unnaturally. So that is something that you've got in this new G300 Max that you don't have in the G270. The 4mm lugs are essentially the same, so you're kind of getting the same grip other than that. When it comes to the tongues, you're essentially getting the same tongue. It's nice, it kind of fits across the entire upper foot and kind of wraps it so it doesn't move around, holds it in place nicely. It's gusseted, so it goes right down inside the shoe, almost like it creates sort of like a half sock sort of thing in there. There are ridges to the tongue inside. It's not like a full covered sock, but it does it is stitched in, so there's a little bit more comfort. The only difference here with the G300 is you also have this notch to put your laces through to hold them in place to work with that kind of lockdown fit that you don't have in the G270. When it comes to the heel, you can see you're getting exactly the same padding inside that heel, almost identical. The only real difference is, it's quite hard to show you here, is that I think that the G300 heel comes up slightly higher on your foot. It's not really particularly noticeable on the runs so far in the runs that I've done, but it does ride a little higher. So if you have trouble with shoes that have high back heels, this one might be a little more problematic for you than this one. So when it came to fit, I ran in a UK 8.5 in both shoes, and that is an EU 42.5 and a US 9.5 for comparison. I did feel there was some differences in terms of the fit. The G270s are a little narrower here, and I've got quite kind of high and fat top of my foot, which I say in all these videos. And just at that point, when you sort of slip into it initially, there is a little bit of tightness. It tends to loosen off a little bit over the longer run, but when you first put them on, you notice there's a bit more sort of a squeeze here that you don't get in the G300s. In terms of the toe box, they're both long enough. There's enough extra room in the top to kind of not have your toes bashing up against the end. You get a little bit more room actually in the G270s on that front. And the other thing, I think that in terms of raising your toes up for wiggle room, there's a little bit more seemingly, or it feels like, room in the G270s too. On this one, this upper kind of sort of outer support here, or outer sort of structure to this shoe, is a little bit more rigid, a little bit more protected than you'll find in the G270. You can see that's a little softer when I push it there. This one is very firm. And so when it sort of just feels slightly different on the inside of the shoe when you're sort of wiggling your toes, it feels like this is a little bit more lower to the toe and you can't quite move it as much as you might do in the G270s. Other than that, in the G300, I found that this edge ran a little bit closer to my little pinkies. So than the G270, it was a little bit tighter on this. I could feel it on the outside of my toe more than I could in the G270. So it's just sort of slightly, a little bit more room here, even though on the G270s are a little bit tighter here. The 300s give you a little less room here. So other than that, in terms of the fit, I got good lockdown, could tighten the laces down nicely. I didn't have movement in either of the shoes. There was sort of plenty of room on the Ultra runs that I did for my feet to kind of flex and swell, even though I was in the same size. I think, you know, the only point is that sort of tightness across the G270. Maybe you might want to go up half a size, but actually in this I would be tempted to go straight into the same size for an Ultra. I didn't find any problems over like 8 hours in these shoes. So we've put in big mileage, long hours in both of these shoes, though putting our hands up, this has been on UK trails, and it's kind of in a mix of approach roads, kind of plenty of mud and hard packed trails, mostly flat with, you know, sort of small inclines. We haven't run up and down mountains, so we haven't put these to the test on something you might find in the US and in Europe. So the G270 run more like traditional Inov-8 shoes. There's more ground contact, they are more direct, they are more firm, in line with other Inov-8 shoes that we've run in the past. Now the zero drop is actually also noticeably, you know, that's particularly over longer distances, and actually very much so if you're coming from a place where you're not used to really running in zero drop shoes. The TrailFly, with that bigger stack of G-Fly foam, are definitely springier and more responsive. It's noticeable when you've got them both on your feet. I've actually been out and run with both on at the same time. So I've just taken the G270 and the G300 out for a comparative spin. I'm wearing them both now, one on each foot. I'm just a little bit on the trail near my house just to see how different they feel, and actually it's quite a remarkable difference. The G270s are much lower in the, you know, you're much lower, much closer to the ground. That zero drop is really apparent, the lower stack is really apparent, and you just feel like you're sort of sitting a little bit more in a lower bucket in the shoe rather than riding high on a high stack of foam. There is a difference in the responsiveness. I actually feel now they're on my foot that the fit is sort of slightly more hugging in the G300s as well. So that zero drop in the G270 versus the 6mm drop in the G300 is noticeable as well. What you're getting here is just a slight, it's not too pronounced, but you're just getting a slight sort of tilt forward on the G300 in comparison to the 270s, the sort of more flat running 270s, which I've come to sort of know from most of Inov-8's shoes. And this does feel different. It does, I have to say, feel a little bit more like some of those other shoes that we've become familiar with, like a Hoka, like some of the, you know, the other trail shoes that we've seen coming out that have got that higher stack. There is a bit more of that in this Inov-8 G300, and that's clearly deliberate by Inov-8 to make this a little bit more of a democratic shoe, I think, that for more and more people can run in. So combined with a higher drop, they're definitely more forgiving too. You're getting way more impact protection for the foot, and also I think that they kind of swallow sort of small rocks and stones more readily than you might find with the G270s. So if you've been put off running in Inov-8 shoes before because they're too firm, the G300s might well change your mind, but you might find them a little bit more enjoyable to run in. I don't think the G270s would have that same impact. And I guess the other thing I really need to talk about is stability. You are going to get a more stable ride from the G270s, absolutely. It's not that the G300s are unstable. They are still a fairly stable platform to run in. I really enjoyed them, didn't have any problems when I was hitting sort of wobbly bits and on the off-roads, but you will get a more stable ride from the G270s. And that's simply because you've got that kind of lower stack of midsole foam. And I'm obviously drawing comparisons here. I'm not saying that I wouldn't run in the G270s. I have and I would, and I think these are also remarkable shoes. They've obviously won a lot of awards and they've gone down a treat before the G300s came along. They are sort of slightly different shoes. How would I run in them? I think the G270s are shoes that I would put on if I were going faster and I want to go lighter and I really want to get more ground contact and I want to be aware of the trails underfoot. I think on sort of more technical trails, maybe that would be the case. You'd want to go for those shoes. With the G300s, I think these are shoes you can whack on and go and run easy trails to your heart's content. They will soak up pretty much everything. In my runs, they just swallowed bumps and lumps and ground. You know, they had that sort of nice efficiency. They had a nice pop to them. They were just a joy and, you know, comfortable to run in all round. You know, I think you might get a little bit more tiredness in the feet with the G270s over the longer haul. And you know, it makes me think, if you're a good racing ultra runner, you want lightweight directness, you would go for a G270. If you're someone who's maybe more of a newcomer to sort of trail running and ultra running, that the G300s might just offer you a little bit of extra cushioning and protection and comfort. And the other thing I notice is the G300s are definitely happier on the tarmac. So if you're doing a trail race that's mixed terrain, or you're going to hit tarmac or really sort of compacted ground, hard ground, then the response that you get out of the G300s actually is more applicable to those kind of conditions. So if you're thinking about coming down from mountains into sort of valleys where you've got long stretches on tarmac, or you've got a trail or an ultra that's going to be with large sections on firmer ground, then I think the G300s would come into their own for that over the G270s. So now when we put up the G300 review, I've also got a couple of questions from people who are about to go out and run the Marathon des Sables across the desert, and they asked me, which would you go for, the G300s or the G270s, which are going to be better for that? Now I ran the MDS back in 2015, and I actually ran it in the Inov-8 Race Ultra 270, so I went for a lighter race shoe that is sort of closer matched to the G270s. The truth is I actually think that both of these shoes can cope well. The G300s though, I think, you know, one of the things people sort of talk about the sand when you go and do the Marathon des Sables and desert races, but actually it's not the sand, it's the rocks, it's the dried up riverbeds with the big sort of kind of fist-sized stones that you're running across carpets of them that really do the damage for blistering. And I do think that the G300s might offer you a little bit more protection over those rock beds, and then you're on to sort of this compacted ground for long stretches where that response and that extra pop that you're going to get from the G300s might suit it better. You will make a compromise there though, because when you hit the sand you're carrying a little bit more weight on your feet with the G300s than you are in the 270s, so there's a compromise. But for me, I think in retrospect, if I'd have had this choice when I went and ran it, I probably would have gone G300s looking back. So the verdict then, it's a difficult one. I wouldn't actually say that one of these shoes is better than the other one. I think they're both really, really high quality shoes. The 270 has won awards. I wouldn't be surprised if the G300 does follow suit with that and picks up awards also. You know, there's really fine margins to choose between these shoes. You can train and race in both of them. You can go long and short in both of them as well, quite comfortably. So basically we'd sum it up like this. The G300 gives you more spring, more response, more protection, and a little bit more long haul comfort, but you are making a trade for weight, so they are heavier. You're going to pay a price for that. Even though it's sort of a small one, it is a noticeable one, and it makes for sort of a slightly better run on harder ground. If you need more ground contact, if you want to feel more in touch with the trail underfoot, then the G270s are the one to go. That's not to say that the G300s don't offer ground contact, because they do, but you're going to get more of it in this, and you're basically trading a little bit of protection in return for that kind of fully connected feel, and arguably a little bit of extra responsiveness and pop. So I kind of touched on who they're for before, but I think, you know, if I were to separate this out, I would say the G300s are going to suit people who are maybe newer to ultra trail running or need that little bit of extra comfort over the long haul. I would put the G270 more in the bracket of people who are kind of like seasoned mountain ultra racers. And if you were going to really sort of push me off the fence and I had to choose one, it's going to be, I think, the G300 for like 100Ks plus on mixed terrain ultras. I'm really excited actually to get out into the conditions where I can take this up and down something a little steeper and a little longer in some of the European mountains, or even to the coastal parts here in the UK, and I think it's going to cope admirably well, and I think that would be the shoe that I would lean towards for that. If I was going to go slightly shorter and slightly pacier, racier, and I wanted to go lighter, I would go for the G270s. So there you have it. That's my head-to-head for the Terraultra G270 and the TrailFly Ultra G300 Max. Hope you've enjoyed watching. If I haven't answered any of the questions, feel free to hit us up in the comment below and I will endeavour to get back to you and answer them. If there's anything else you'd like to see in a full review of the G300, we're still working on this. We've got a multi-tester review coming up. Let us know as well, because we will answer those questions as we run with them. I've been Kieran, this has been the Run Testers. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you hear when those reviews go live. And yeah, hope you've enjoyed it, and we will see you soon on the Run Testers. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.